Chapter 178, The Subsequent Ideas. Call the police? Fur's Wall repeated in surprise. To Beyonders, lodging a police report seemed to be something of another world. Jia paced back and forth as she tugged her coarse blonde hair. The scene of Darkholm's death is harrowing and creepy. As long as the police aren't blind, they would definitely pass the case on to the mandated punishers. The Nighthawks, the machinery hive mind, or the special department of the military. When that happens, we can leak some more information and let them know that the murderer is Kalangos. At that point, the entire city will be chasing after him. Our goal is only to look for Kalangos, not to capture him. With the help of so many Beyonders, things would become much simpler and safer. Once Kalangos panics and makes a mistake, it would be our chance to claim our bounty. Heh, in referring to the discovery of his whereabouts. Jia laughed dryly and looked at the appalled Furs. Do you think that the only way I know to deal with problems is by charging into them head first? The difference between us and Kalangos is as vast as the Desi Bay. Furs nodded slowly and said, Your understanding of yourself is absolutely right. You've done too many things of a similar nature. Hence, the losses that you've suffered is sufficient for you to advance to Sequence 8. Luckily, you're still rational enough regarding this matter. Jia lowered her head to look at her bayonet. She thought for a moment and said, I have to be honest. I clearly sensed the approach of death earlier. Kalangos was no doubt nearby. That was an aura evil enough to destroy us at any time. That triggered an instinctual response in me. Furs wore her silver bracelet that had 2 stones left and thought seriously. I agree with your idea. Let's inform Miss Audrey first and lodge the police report after. Yes, regardless if it was Darkholm or his underlings who found Kalangos' traces. We could continue to investigate with that approach and find out Kalangos' activity range and the location of his residence. Jia creased her slim blonde eyebrows and said, but Kalangos would definitely not remain in the same place. Even as one of the 7 pirate admirals, even if he had the assistance of a mystical artifact. Kalangos had to be extremely careful in Backland. Even Nast, the king of the 5 seas, had once encountered disaster here and was nearly caught. No, what I meant was to surmise or confirm the purpose of Kalangos' visit to Backland based on the clues. Once we know what he is trying to do, no matter how he disguises himself or what tricks he pulls, he'll be exposed to us in the end. Then, our mission would be accomplished, Furs explained in detail. 2 years of novel writing experience tells me that things would become simple once we grasp the crux of the matter. Jia looked at her best friend in shock. She couldn't believe the woman had just made such a logical statement. I'm different from you. I'm merely too lazy to think, while you think with your muscles. Furs pursed her lips, leaned her head sideways, and smiled. Teasing me doesn't make you smarter. Jia tried to smooth out her few strands of blonde hair that was sticking out. All right, let's head over to Empressboro and tell Miss Audrey about this. Furs nodded faintly and said, So, what's our emergency contact method with Miss Audrey? Jia was momentarily put at a loss. She looked afar at the tombstone as she said, She told me that pet dog of hers we saw earlier walks herself at least 5 times a day. Well, the next walk should be after lunch. In other words, we have to loiter around suspiciously outside Count Hall's luxurious manor. The corner of For's lips twitched. Jia suddenly looked sideways and revealed an obsequious smile. Furs, or would you prefer to just sneak in? I don't think that would be difficult for you. It's what you're good at. A hereditary count for centuries, one of the most influential parliament members in the House of Lords, the largest shareholder of Varvit Bank, the 4th largest shareholder of Backland Bank, the special consultant of the Royal Bank of Loan, the 3rd largest shareholder of Suchet Bank in the Intis Republic, the 2nd largest shareholder of Constant Coal and Steel Consortium, and so on. These are the titles of Miss Audrey's father. Zhao, use your brain. How could a man like that not employ any Beyonders? Would he not have any prized collections? This is different from those destitute viscounts and barons. Furs replied in exasperation. I swear in the name of God, if I were to sneak in, I would be discovered and caught within 5 minutes. Zhao nodded continuously in agreement. Let's wait for the golden retriever then. With that said, she led the way. After she took a few steps forward, she spoke with her back facing Furs. Well, I will compensate you for your losses and the damages in the future. In referring to the stone, of course. Listening to that, the corner of For's lips lifted and she said, I was saving myself. And, Shaw, you're going the wrong way. God, if you were an apprentice and ended up becoming a traveler in the future, it would be a disaster. Outside Count Hall's luxurious manor, Zhao and Furs hid behind an Intis parasol tree and secretly observed their target building in silence, watching the people walking to and fro. After God knows how long, they finally saw the golden retriever come out from a hidden hole under the wall. It pricked up its ears and looked to its left and right, appearing very cautious. Just as Susie started taking its walk happily, a black-mailed dog popped up from nowhere. It fawned on Susie and started running around in circles. This is the first time I'm seeing a dog show such a human-like reaction. Just how much does it hate that black dog? Zha sighed. She could tell from Susie's gaze and facial expression that there was obvious detest. First smiled and said, it's just like encountering a rash, disgusting, and persistent lecher. Seeing Susie attempt to speed up to escape the black dog's pursuit, Zha stood up to administer justice. My ruling is for you to leave her alone, Zha shouted with a mask of solemnity. The black dog was taken aback and immediately scampered away with its tail between its legs. Susie let out a breath of relief and slowed down. It barked politely and wagged its tail. That was close. I nearly said thank you to them, the golden retriever thought in joy. That would have been a very awkward situation. A melodic tune slowly came to a halt as Audrey picked up the latest intelligence Zha and Furs had delivered and read it with whereupon brows. She closed the piano cover and stood up elegantly. She paced back and forth in her piano room and considered her next course of action. Kalongos is a very dangerous man if Zha and Furs continued investigating. They might end up in danger. It might even expose me, yes. I should just proceed according to their suggestion. Oh yeah, it's another 2 hours until the Tarot Club. I wonder what Mr. Fool would suggest. If he's still not interested, he'll discuss it with the hangman carefully. Audrey gradually calmed herself down. This was the first time she had encountered, or perhaps was described as being placed in such a perilous situation. There was already one death. 3 in the afternoon. Audrey's vision recovered from a crimson and blurry state before seeing the boundless gray fog that didn't belong to reality. The lofty palace that looked like the home of a giant, the long ancient modeled bronze table, and the fool who was always engulfed by a thick layer of fog. Lastly, she saw the hanged man and the sun. At that moment, Audrey's tense and anxious emotions seemed to relax. She felt so safe, so calm. In participating in the Tarot Club that doesn't belong in the material world, and am dealing with Mr. Fool who is nearly a god. Kalongos and I are on different levels. Audrey sat in an upright position proudly. She lifted her chin slightly and greeted cheerfully. Good afternoon, Mr. Fool. Good afternoon, Mr. Hangman. Good afternoon, Mr. Sun. After they greeted one another, Klein saw that Miss Justice was indicating her desire to speak. Therefore, he nodded faintly to express his permission. Honorable Mr. Fool, I wonder if your adorer has received the compensation of 300 pounds. Audrey asked, holding back her urge to talk about Kalongos while she showed concern over her leader's adorer. Klein smiled and said, I didn't pay close attention to this matter. But as my adorer didn't request for additional help, I suppose he has already received it. Yes, I checked multiple times. There are 300 pounds lying in my anonymous bank account, Klein added in his head happily. That's great. Audrey relaxed and looked across her. Mr. Hangman, there's been progress regarding Kalondos. Alger suddenly sat up straight. He couldn't hide his excitement as he asked, "Where is he?" Unfortunately, he noticed our investigations just after we discovered his tracks. He killed one of the personnel involved. Audrey repeated the highlights of Gios and Four's story and explained their follow-up plan in detail. Alger nodded faintly and said, "I'll pay close attention." Then, he turned to the side and looked towards the seat of honor at the long bronze table. Under the vacant gaze of the son, Derek, who listened but didn't understand anything, he said, "Honorable Mr. Fool, if I were to find out Kalondo's true intention and the very important and magical item that he intends to obtain, please allow me to recite your name and inform you through the ritual." He didn't repeat his request for the fool's adorer to provide him assistance. As he brought it up before and the fool had given his answer, there was no need to harp on the topic. Otherwise, it might provoke the god. Hence, Alger made it clear that his intention was only to report his findings. If the final temptation was sufficient, he believed that Mr. Fool's adorer would definitely appear. That works. Audrey widened her eyes. I should have asked for the right to report as well. I might be able to gain Mr. Fool's guidance occasionally, she thought with regret. Under everyone's gaze, Klein leaned back into his chair and nodded faintly. He replied slowly, "You may."